Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at two comics from Spire Christian Comics, There's a New World Coming, and Up from Harlem. Spire Comics was a comic book company that pretty much just existed in the from 73 to the early 80s. But they've been reprinting them for years, selling them at Christian bookstores mostly. They started out as a division of this Christian publisher named Revell, and they had the Spire Christians logo. Around the late 70s, one of the employees of Revell started his own company called Barber Publishing, and they continued to reprint. They got the rights to some of the titles that Spire originally put out and kept reprinting them. That's why this one has a logo, Barber Christian Comics. The same thing as Spire. They just stopped producing new stuff pretty much by the early 80s. And you can tell by the artwork. I got some of these comics when I was a kid, and everything seemed very, hippie-ish. I mean, I'm talking about even in the 80s, I was picking these up, and everything seemed like all funky Beretta episode or, 1973, because that's when most of them were made. Let's start with the first one. This is adapted from a book by Hal Lindsey. He writes the script of this as well. Cover by Al Hartley. A big part of Spire Christian Comics was the Archie artist, Al Hartley. Al Hartley, I guess, was a devout Christian. And not only did he start doing these religious comics, as well as continue his, Archie output, he convinced Archie to license the Archie characters. And there's a whole bunch of Christian Archie comics out there. Everything Archie, no, what was it? Archie's Sunshine. Actually, there's some in the back cover here. Yeah, Archie's Sunshine, Archie's Festival. They're just basically somehow, it's the Archie gang, but they're all preaching Christianity. So it was very weird setup they had there. It's kind of amazing Archie would do that. It's kind of making the brand a little less, good. So cover by Al Hartley, like I said. The art in this is by Al Hartley. Apparently it's inked by Jack Abel, longtime Marvel inker. And it's got some sharp inking. I was never a fan of Jack Abel, but sometimes he had an interesting style. A lot of great psychedelic imagery in this comic and just weird cosmic stuff. It's almost like Jim Starlin had a hand in making this. So basically, this is what this comic is Hal Lindsey's exciting explanation of the Book of Revelation. We see these three cool kids, circa 1973, floating through time and space. And this woman says, oh, it all started when I opened my book to the Book of Revelation. And I guess it sucked these three people into this time vortex where they're going to see the coming world and what the Book of Revelations has predicted. They see the Apostle John who wrote Revelations. We see God's outline of history. It's such nonsense. It's ridiculous. Whatever, if you know the Bible at all, it's the Book of Revelations. Times of tribulation, blah, blah, blah. So one of the first things that's going to happen, I love this. They're trying to be all hip so kids will like this comic, teenagers. They call, the first thing that happens is the Great Snatch. That's their word for the rapture, which is just, don't Google that. You'll probably get something you don't want to see. The Great Snatch will happen. And that's the rapture. Basically, all the Christians will get sucked up to heaven without even dying. So a lot of people, it's like the Left Behind books or the movies, if you ever saw those. It's kind of interesting, though, for a Christian comic. Al Hartley draws really hot women. All these girls are very usable. And they're hotter than most girls drawn in, at the time, Marvel DC comics. There's a weird shout out to some guy named Larry Norman. I guess he was a Christian rocker. One of the main women says, just like Larry Norman's great song. And then they even have a quote. They even have the copyright thing, like, these lyrics are copyright Beechwood Music Corporation. Just kind of weird. He pops it out of nowhere and disappears. I didn't look up Larry Norman. Maybe he had a big hit. I don't know. But I doubt he's good. One thing I mentioned about this comic, it's really quite remarkable. The coloring's amazing. It has such great colors throughout. It's not listed in the comic database, the Grand Comic Database. It doesn't tell you. I would really like to know. It's actually amazingly good coloring. Especially, considering it's, the old comic newsprint paradigm. Here's the signs that Jesus is about to return to Earth. You probably know this stuff. Like Israel will reunite or will come back to their homeland. There'll be a unprecedented turn to drugs. I love some of these predictions. They didn't even have drugs back then. I really doubt the Bible mentioned drugs. Maybe wine or something. Like people will become drunks. But I don't think the Bible ever mentioned drugs. Especially not hypodermic needles and pills. The decline of the United States as a major world power. The Apostle John didn't even know there was going to be a United States. What the fuck are you talking about? Oh, just ridiculous. Oh, I love this panel. They're showing the Garden of Eden and how man fell by, being duped by the snake, by Satan. That is such crazy, primitive, weird shit. I like it a lot. Now the Antichrist shows up. I think it's Prez from the DC comic. Because he's very charismatic and everyone loves him. Thinks he's a great guy. But he's actually the Antichrist. He'll turn out to be bad news for everybody, though, guys. Don't fall for the Antichrist. He's bad news. The Antichrist will actually bring peace to the world. So beware of anyone who preaches peace, guys. They're probably the Antichrist. And they show us all these various tribulations that are coming, economic disaster. So all these crazy colors everywhere and nice little weird flourishes, design flourishes. I gotta say, I really dig this comic. It's complete nonsense, but it is fun to look at. Look, Death, it's this nice deep blue here. Really impressive. Look at this, you can see the Jack Gable inking. It's almost a Wally Wood, like shading. And Jack Gable studied under Wally Wood for years. He was an acolyte. Throwing in some cool zipatone effects behind this mushroom cloud. That's totally Jack Gable. He's not credited anywhere in the comic. I wouldn't have known he inked this if it wasn't for the Grand Comic Book Database. I might have suspected seeing stuff like that, though. If I was smart enough, I would have been like, hey, that looks like Jack Gable. So apparently, 144,000 Jewish evangelists will rise up. All of a sudden, there's going to be 144,000 Jewish guys who are like, hey, Christ is coming. We were wrong all this time. Now we love Christ and believe in him. And then they have this whole shout out to the Jews, how the Jews are God's chosen race, how the Jews wrote every book in the Bible, most every book. And of course, Jesus was born into a Jewish family. The Jews are obviously blessed because look at all the trials and tribulations they've survived. I like that hand of Satan there. Satan has a special hatred for the Jews. Look at these colors, guys. so appealing. It's eye candy. Oh, I love this. At some point, 4 angels are going to stand at the 4 corners of the world and stop all of the winds. And these kind of like groovy, psychedelic angels, they're kind of remind me of like the art on like feminine hygiene products in the 70s. You know, like that weird, wispy watercolor art that most maxi pads had. I had a couple sisters, so I saw that every day in the bathroom. They talk about things are getting worse. 1/3 of all the trees were destroyed. Hail and fire mixed with blood will strike the earth. All green grass will be burned up. 1/3 of the sea will become blood. The waters will be poisoned. So basically, it's a shit show. Everyone's going to be dying apocalypse time, you know? Excuse me. More Zipatone effect. That was pretty rare back then to see that in comics. Early 70s. Oh, now things are getting groovy. Look at this. Craziness. I like this demon here. He just looks kind of like he's worried. Like, oh boy, what's going to happen next? Oh, I'm scared. Then we meet the whore of Babylon. They call her the mother of harlots. Look how hot he draws her. I mean, this is supposedly a Christian comic, but if I was a young kid in 1970, whatever, I'd be looking at this like just for salacious reasons, you know, instead of looking at Spider-Man. I'd be like, whoa, this comic I got has got kind of sexy ladies in it. Yeah, there's going to be a strengthening of occultism. People will turn to black magic and sorcery instead of following Jesus. That's a good-looking page. I guess the Antichrist is going to team up with the whore of Babylon. Then he's going to betray her and kill her. It's all nuts. It's just so weird reading this kind of stuff that, like, people way more successful than I am in life, seemingly well-adjusted people. I'm not one of those people at all. I'm not very well-adjusted, but then the majority of people in the world, at least in the United States and Canada and Mexico, they believe in this insanity, like, to the core of their being. This is all, like, fantasy, you know? But I don't know. I guess there's more of them than me, so they're probably right. I'm wrong. Just kidding. I think they're crazy. I love this. There's a thing in the book of Revelations. And locusts came out of the pit. They had breastplates of iron. Their wings sounded like many horses running to battle. And there were stingers in their tails. Incredible. John wrote 2,000 years ago and described modern helicopters perfectly. I don't think that's a perfect description of a helicopter. I think if you sent that to the patent office, they wouldn't grant you a patent like, oh, yeah, that's a helicopter. That's all I need to know. It's got a breastplate of iron. The wings sound a certain way. Yeah, there you go. Crazy. And now, like, the huge world war is going to start near the Euphrates, you know, the Middle East, because that divides East and West. I like this crazy panel, this great logo, Armageddon. We see all these dead soldiers, massive carnage. More Zipatone, of course. More disasters. Hailstones weighing 100 pounds are going to fall from the sky. Mountains will flatten out. Islands will vanish. A lot of the predictions in Revelations seem to be coming true because of climate change. So maybe I should stop being so cynical. And then Jesus will return. Look how cool and buff Jesus looks. He looks like a hot movie star. He comes to earth and he offers everyone a chance, all these sinners, and they totally ignore him. I love this little crazy scene. It looks like he's in a discotheque or something, or a nightclub. And just all these sketchy, like, sinners drinking and carousing. And I don't know why. It's a really interesting panel. Really weird tableau. I like this fire. Great color on the fire there. The lake of fire in that hand. It's a great, expressive hand. You can tell the guy's in pain. Some more groovy art. I guess all the dead believers will be resurrected. And it doesn't matter how, like, desiccated their bodies are. Jesus will make them whole. So I guess that's like, you won't have to live for all eternity if you were chewed up by a shark. Like, oh, I'm up in heaven, but I look like a piece of whatever, a wad of meat. It wouldn't be the best thing. This is interesting. I don't know if it's another anchor, but all of a sudden, it almost reminds me of like Dan Spiegel or something. All of a sudden, the outlines become really thick. Or actually, some of the Filipino artists would do that. Just look how thick the outlines are. Kind of looks good. I don't know, just weird. Another interesting little design flourish showing all the sinful things. Giant lips are sinful. Stay away from giant lips without a face. Man, I just love these colors. Sorry to sound like a magpie, but I'm just amazed. So I guess at this point, finally, there's the final judgment. And all the sinners who still haven't come across to Christ should think at that point, they see Jesus, he's saying, hey, all you got to do is say you love me, and you don't have to go through any of this shit. But man is stubborn, stuck in his sin, a lot of them, and they kind of march down to hell. And then the earth is destroyed. That's part of the prediction. That's pretty groovy, weird panel there. It's bizarre. Just showing this whole nuclear cloud. The earth will be restored. And I'm a little confused. Maybe I should reread the book of Revelations. But so if everyone's up in heaven, what do you need a restored earth for? I guess maybe heaven and earth will be the same thing, synonymous, and you can just travel back and forth, and they will both be paradises, you know? I don't know. I like this here where the characters say, it all seems like science fiction or a fairy tale. Yeah, it does. It seems like the psychotic musings of a mentally retarded person. I mean, yeah, this is all nonsense. So crazy. And then they give the last final, sales pitch. Come drink from the waters of life. You'll never be thirsty again. All you need to do is come. Well, coming's not bad. I'll give him that. Here's Hal Lindsey. He looks like he's a quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. There's Al Hartley, the artist. And they wish the reader good fortune, and hopefully that they'll see the new world that's coming. Apparently, Barber Books also did knock-knock jokes collections, tongue twisters, and westerns. Very diversified. I think they were all Christian, though. Here's another look at that Archie ad. I don't know who drew this, but it looks interesting. Like, it's different than any Archie art I've ever seen. A different art style. Okay, that's a masterpiece, I think. I love that comic. It's nuts. Tom Skinner, well, the comic's called Up from Harlem, but this is the story of Tom Skinner. I guess Tom Skinner was a minor celebrity in the 70s. He was the chaplain for an NFL team. I guess that was a thing then? Maybe it still is. He'd pray with the team at halftime, before a game. He was on TV, But, look at this comic. Imagine it's 1973, and you're like an older kid. And you think Spider-Man's and the Flash are a little too kitty stuff, But then you see this on the stands. He got like these strumpets, and trollops, and sexy ladies, and you got all this action and gang fights, violence and sex. You'd be like, whoa, I'm gonna give this one a try. This one's insane. So by the way, this one, it says Al Hartley on the art, but he inks it over Dick Ayers pencils, and you can tell. I don't like the layouts in this nearly as much. This comic isn't as nearly pleasing to the eye to me. But you can kind of tell it's Dick Ayers, doing the pencils. I wouldn't have guessed that either. I know that from the Grand Comic Book Database. But once I realized that. I didn't notice that the Marquis playing Shaft, which is very apropos. So we see this prostitute saying, "You speaking about love, man?" And Tom Skinner says, "That's my bag." There's so much slang in here, like early 70s black slang. Oh my God. And then Tom Skinner asks her, "Have you ever tried making love to God?" "I know a lot about making love, baby, but to God, it's called worship. It's out of sight." Oh my God, every line in here is such a... I can't groove off God. I've got to make a living. Then some people come up and say, "Hey, that's Tom Skinner. I've seen that guy on TV." Here he is praying with some team. Oh, the Washington Redskins, if you care about sports. Now that I look at this, I'm surprised that Al Hartley had anything to do with it. It just looks like Dick Ayers. Maybe a little in the faces. Maybe he redrew some stuff. So this kind of thug guy starts talking to Tom Skinner like, "Oh, that Jesus stuff is full of shit. It's crazy, whatever. And we're not playing games around here. This is the street." And Tom Skinner says, "I know what kind of action you got going. I've been up in it up to my ears." "You?" And he tells them his whole story. He was a total gang member at 14. He joined this gang, just lived a life of just crime and violence. We get a little fun action here. Because one day Tom says, "I'm taking over the gang," and he fights for it. And he stabs the gang leader. And he takes over the gang. So in his little world of Harlem, he's on top of the world. He's just like, everyone's all like, "Oh, that Tom Skinner. He's one groovy cat." I'm trying to talk like the comic. He ain't no jive-ass turkey, that's for sure. And one day, Tom Skinner is getting ready for a huge gang war that night. Says, "I'm going to go rest." Goes home, turns on the radio, hoping to hear his rock music. And he just calls it rock. "Where's my rock?" But this preacher comes on the radio. I guess he had it on the wrong station. And in 2 minutes, this preacher just explaining that you got to ask Jesus Christ to forgive you and accept him. Tom Skinner's like, "Yeah, that sounds totally right on. I'm going to trust you with my whole life." And back to the present, he, a lot of these guys argue with Tom Skinner are basically saying Christianity is this white man's religion. And I think at one point they even call him an Uncle Tom. Back to the flashback, though. He basically, that night, goes to his gang and says, "Guys, I'm giving up violence. You should too." And supposedly a miracle happened. Later on, one of his gang members said, "When you started talking that Jesus jazz, I was about to cut you up right then and there, but something stopped me. I couldn't move." And a bunch of the other guys said the same thing. That's dumb. It's not true. But that's what they told Tom Skinner, and he believed it. So this one, this is kind of surprising. He's arguing with Tom Skinner, and all of a sudden this building, a chemical manufacturing building, blows up. And they're all like, "Yeah, right on. We're going to bust the system. We're going to blow those fat cats out of their fancy offices." So the whole time while he's arguing with Tom Skinner, they're waiting for this bomb to go off that they planted. It's kind of out of left field. And of course, Tom Skinner explains you got to change people. They're just going to rebuild that building tomorrow with the same system. You got to change people. And the only way to do that is through Jesus and God. I just thought of something, how funny it would be. Like I'd probably have the most views I've ever had in a video if I pretended that just by reading this comic, I totally went from being an atheist to a total born again. And was, after every page, I'd be like, oh my God, I've been wrong my whole life. This makes such perfect sense now. People would like totally watch this video, just like, oh my God, a guy converted in 15 minutes on a YouTube video. He went from being an atheist to a Christian from this stupid comic book. And they're still mocking him, you know, mocking his Sunday school bullshit. But Tom is unflappable, keeps just going on about love and Jesus and how everything would be better if people just believed in Jesus. So the prostitute's been listening the whole time, and she says, come, I want that kind of love too, Tom. Come with me, please. All my life I've been playing with love. The love I give tonight will be different. And she takes Tom to her apartment. Come in, Tom, you'll like it. So, of course, I'm thinking at this point, like, what kind of crazy Christian sex ritual has she cooked up? This could be, you know, kinky and hot. But no, it's not. It's her grandma. And she wants to show her grandma. She can't wait to tell her that she's giving up prostitution and is finally accepting Christ. Once again, look at the way he draws these, you know, this woman in particular. I mean, this is totally usable shit. These were sold in Christian bookstores. When I was 6, if I was in a Christian bookstore, I'd be like, oh my God, this is a dirty comic. This is like way better than anything Marvel and DC's putting out. The grandma cries and she's thrilled. She's like, I prayed so long for this day. Turns out her brother's in prison. So now the sister is she asked Tom to come with her to prison, see if they can get through to her brother. Some of these faces are kind of interesting. They're distinctive. You know, and a lot of artists and comics will just draw the same face for every character, slight variations. But that guy really has like a mug on him. Look at this. She's hot. I like how she is still wearing her like prostitute clothes, even though she's given up sex work. So once again, the brother is saying the same stuff, like, you know, don't give me that fairy tale bullshit. Life is corrupt. Cops, bigots, not knowing who your father is, rats, junkies. But Tom tells him, Jesus' life doesn't have to be a ripoff. And he says, you know what I'm going to do when I get out of here? I've got a better plan. I'm going to get me a white deuce and a quarter and a little black beauty. I like this how they have a little asterisk. A white deuce apparently is an Electra 225, which is a brand of car back then. But I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's like, yeah. Of all the things, all the crazy slang and jive talk they've had in here, you'd think they'd have more of those asterisks to explain things. I like that not only does he want a little black beauty, but one that can float above the sidewalk next to his white deuce and a quarter. I like this little montage. Tom Skinner says, you know, a lot of the guys in the prison here had that same plan. And look where they ended up. It's a dumb plan. He's not going to change his ways, he says. But it's kind of nice that he says, but Cora, you know, his sister, I'm glad for you. Just thought that was a nice little human moment. Where even though he's a total, you know, scofflaw, he's glad that his sister is off the streets. So Tom Skinner's just going on and on. Cora's pimp says, hey, you better start hustling. And she says, not anymore, Leroy. I'm listening to my Lord. And then that night, Tom Skinner's on TV on a big talk show, so everyone's watching it. And we see people all over the city watching his telecast. And, you know, he's spouting his sales pitch. It is like a different kind of ministry than your average Christian ministry. Obviously, it's a black ministry. So he basically really focuses on like Jesus. Only Jesus can wipe out injustice, racism, and hate. So that would have an appeal to black people, obviously. I think all those Southern Baptist churches that were the backbone of the Civil Rights Movement, it was such a sucker, and no pun intended, but it was such a, you know, nice thing in their lives. Their lives were pretty shitty, but they had the church. And one of the people watching Tom Skinner on TV is Cora's brother in prison. And one little telecast, he says, Tom Skinner's right. Come into my life, Jesus. You're the only one who can change this world. Please start with me. And then Tom Skinner says, if you'd like to know more about Jesus, write to me, Tom Skinner Associates. So seeing this ad in the back, it's talking about all of Tom Skinner's, divisions of his gospel crusade. And after reading this whole comic, this Tom Skinner seems like a good guy. I'm realizing he's just another rich televangelist. He's probably was raking in the dough with all these side hustles. Mass Communication Division, Christian Family Ministries, Creative Arts Division. So I guess they would have like bands and put out records. I don't know if this is a real band, Soul Liberation. They look pretty funky. I should look them up. They could be a great band for all I know. So I don't know. He's probably just another, just like Jerry Falwell type guy. You have some more ads. More titles from Spire Christian Comics. This has got to be one of the best titles ever of a comic. Hansel, the girl who loved the swastika. Tom Landry and the Dallas Cowboys. One of the famous ones was The Cross and the Switchblade, about a Hispanic gangbanger who finds the Lord. I used to have that one. I don't know what happened. I couldn't find it on my shelves. And Hello, I'm Johnny Cash. I would like to read that one. They even had these little like kiddie comics. Barney the Bear. There was a bunch of those. And like I said earlier, a bunch of Archie comics. I love that they have one title called Jughead Soul Food. That's sounds like a 90s alt band or alternative band. So there you have it, guys. I wish I had more, but these are the only two Spire comics I have. But they're really fun and interesting, weird comics. It's kind of like in the Mondo section of my of the Academy's collection. I can't really say that they're amazingly great comics. It's not like Alan Moore or Robert Crumb, but they're really interesting, and some of the art is really nice and in a weird way. So these have been in quarter boxes forever. So I'm sure you could find these for nothing. And I don't know about the other titles, but these are pretty fun. I remember The Cross and the Switchblade was pretty interesting too, because you get to see lots of seedy gang life in the ghetto, and that's always kind of fun until they get converted, and then it gets really boring. So hope you liked it, guys. I had a good time re-looking at these Christian comics, and hopefully I'll see you here next time at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.